when I was in third grade, I wrote down that I wanted to play. I wanted to get a sports scholarship at BYU. Something I've learned over the years, is you really just have to put it on paper. You got to say it out loud and stuff will happen. We're definitely capable of more than we think.
Hey, welcome. My name's Mike Lacey, and we are grateful to have Mr. Max Tooley. For those of you as old as me, you may not remember, but it was only a couple of years ago that Max was one of our famous, absolutely fantastic linebackers at BYU. Great to have you here, Max.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me on today.
I know.
Looking forward to it.
What brings you to Provo? Because this guy, all right, let me interrupt just a second. But we have to introduce Max because this guy has some records at BYU. He played 60 games in his career, so he has the most games in career. He's 14th all time in total tackles and 4th, according to the stats I saw, in solo tackles at BYU. So you were all over the field, played a million games. You're 2nd all time in linebacker interceptions. And then your 2 pick sixes tie you, I think, for 1st among all the statistics. Maybe this year we had a guy that...
Yeah, who knows?
I don't know. I don't follow it that closely. But, Ben, the one thing how in the heck did you get 60 games? Now, most football players in the NCAA are there for 4 eligible seasons, right? So if you played 60 flipping games... that means you played 15 games per season. I don't remember BYU having 15 games in a season.
No, yeah. I don't know if that record will ever be broken again.
Think about it.
I really timed it up perfectly with my first year was the first year that redshirt freshmen could play in 4 games. So I played in all 4 games that first year.
Oh, and so you redshirted, so it didn't count.
Yeah, so I got 4 games that year, and then obviously played my second year. I think I played in every single game my redshirt freshman year. Played in every game that year. My next year, I think I played in every single game but 1. And then the next year, I think I missed 6 or 7 games. Actually.
Injury?
Yeah. So my junior year, when I hurt my shoulder, I think I only played 7 games out of the 12. So I missed 5.
Did they give you like an injury?
I probably could have taken a 7th year and even, added 12 more games to that. But I was ready to be done after my last year. I had a full year finally of, being healthy and stuff and playing in every game.
But 6 seasons was all right. So you had a redshirt year, but you played 4 games that season.
Yeah.
All right. Did you get a COVID year?
So I got the COVID year as well. So that's
okay.
Yeah. So
all right.
Played in 2020. I was mostly a special teams guy that year. I didn't play a lot of defense, played a lot of garbage minutes. So in my head, like that year didn't really happen anyways.
Was it 21 when we traveled to Coastal Carolina?
Yeah. No, 2020 was that year.
It was that year?
Yeah.
And you were on special teams?
I played a little bit, but...
Did you travel?
Yeah, I traveled, but I don't know. It was always a crazy situation, fighting for minutes and stuff, and... There's a lot of things that go into that there
are things that, are team things, and then there's political things. But just being on the team, there are so many stories. That Coastal Carolina game, yeah. I'm sure you could tell me some things about that.
Yeah, I probably could. Honestly, it's funny because I played a little bit in the beginning of that game, and I was doing pretty decent. I had a good 3rd down stop, hit the quarterback pretty hard. Actually took his helmet off. Had a decent first quarter.
Now for our fans who think that's a little too tough,
didn't get a penalty for it. So
no,
the refs know better.
No, and a good safe fair hit, and that's the rest of your teammates are out there high fiving you afterwards, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it was a big play, but later in that game for whatever reason. The game plan wasn't very set because it was a short week. We only had, I think we got called on Thursday that week.
The shortest of weeks.
Yeah,
Are you kidding me?
Thursday that week to go out to South Carolina, play Coastal Carolina. So naturally, it was a little bit of a crazy week preparation-wise, but yeah, I was playing a little bit, and then like the second half when, crunch time was there, I wasn't really on the field. And it's funny, I don't know if I should share this, but I remember like talking to Kalani after, just like high-fiving him or whatever we do as we're getting on the buses after, and I think he apologized to me for that game, or he said something.
That you weren't in?
Yeah, just that I wasn't, in as much, and it was kind of interesting to me. I didn't think he'd apologize to me, but yeah, it was kind of interesting. But I played a little bit more after that for the rest of the season.
Good for you.
Yeah, had to. Sometimes, yeah, football's crazy. Yeah, every level there's a certain level of politics and certain swaying factors. So kind of had to fight that force my whole career.
Well, how did you deal with that? For example, it would be frustrating. You have a good play, you get it sounds like when you hit the tackle, that was probably tackle for a loss.
Yeah, I mean, it was third and long. It was third and long, and he was
Okay.
scrambling, and yeah, he wasn't even close to getting the first down. It was a decent play.
Important play because
Yeah.
you stopped him.
Yeah.
So in your mind, like all of us, hey, I had a good play. I'm doing well. I'm contributing to the team. And then, you don't see the field, and you can kind of get down. I don't know. You can get down on yourself or down on the circumstance. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, the way I saw it is, especially that 2020
and were
COVID
you a freshman?
year.
Were you a freshman?
I was technically a sophomore.
Okay.
I mean, technically, if you want to look at it, my redshirt year and then my redshirt freshman year, and then it was the COVID year. So I kind of still felt like a freshman.
Sure.
And the fact that year wasn't really counting, I never really knew what to call myself, COVID sophomore, COVID redshirt, there were a bunch of different terms people came up with, but I don't know. I always just saw myself as like a third year. But yeah, I mean, the way I kind of tried to deal with it, like I said, I was a special teams guy that year for the most part.
Who were the other linebackers on the field that year?
We had like Peyton Wilgar,
right?
Keenan Peely, Isaiah Kafusi,
sure,
Ben Bywater. I think he may have gotten hurt that year. That may have been the year he got shoulder surgery. But I'm trying to think, we had a bunch of guys.
No, I remember those names, and
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It seems like BYU most of the time has some fantastic linebackers.
Yeah, and I mean,
somehow we developed good linebackers and used to be really good tight ends. Maybe we're back in that factory too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it should be to the point where we got well-rounded guys in all aspects of, producing in the NFL, making it to the next level. I think there's enough athletes, in Utah going to BYU and other, recruits coming out of their way to come to BYU that easily could make it to the next level and stuff. I think
you're right.
But obviously, there's a track record with linebackers. You got Fred Warner, Sione Takitaki, those guys. So, I mean, there's a bunch of dogs.
Kyle Van Noy. I mean, back in my day, Glenn Red played for a long time. And these are names that you wouldn't know, but he was with the New Orleans Saints for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Leon White was a fantastic linebacker. I know I'm forgetting some of these guys because we had some great linebackers that went on and played.
I'm the worst with names. Like, I have so many other names that I'm like, I know all these guys are balling out. I'm trying to think. Jensen from Bountiful, he was pretty good linebacker back in the day. Played with like Ben Criddle and stuff.
Yeah.
Trying to think. There's a couple other guys for sure.
No, and you guys, and look at I don't know. You probably are paying attention to our Cougars this year.
Oh, yeah. No,
what a fun season, right?
Yeah, no. We got some dogs.
And those linebackers. I was at the Baylor game, right?
Mm.
And there was a critical point in the game where it was tight, and they were going for it midfield, and they were going for it fourth and just a couple yards. And the way their offense was clicking, it was kind of like, well, this is going to be a tough stop.
Yeah.
And Isaiah Glasker, or I think it was Isaiah Glasker, came in through a gap and made a tackle for a loss, dropped the guy behind the line of scrimmage. Mm-hmm. And it was so exciting as a BYU fan because, for us to make the plays that we make nowadays,
mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. You see this defense where they're changing the look all the time. What's your feeling?
Yeah.
With our new defensive scheme versus what you were playing in.
Yeah, I mean, like we kind of mentioned, I got 1 year in the system, and I don't think it was the first year, obviously, for Jay and everybody. It was kind of a learning curve.
Sure.
Being in the Big 12 especially.
Oh, man.
Playing that caliber.
The
of
learning
game.
curve there is a big deal.
Yeah, so I'd say, like, we definitely still had aspects and elements to that aggressive style defense the first year I came, but it was just so, new and fresh on everybody's mind that it kind of needed a year to
sink in.
To sink in, for guys to get comfortable, to feel comfortable, to be able to adjust and do things on their own rather than kind of just doing what the playbook says. So it's been really cool to see, especially the linebackers get after it, get sacks, make big plays. That was one thing I kind of wish I got more in my career, was sacks. I think that goes a long way. NFL scouts and stuff,
it's true,
put a lot of stock into
your
sacks
stats
and getting home to the quarterback, But I mean, the scheme and the guys they got, yeah, for sure, they're big time.
And it's interesting. I've talked about this with some other people, but Tyler Batty, great defensive end. He had a goal before the season that was really high in getting sacks.
Yeah,
and in a plain vanilla defense, the D end is frequently, one of the first guys that's getting there on a pass. But, in this system, I frequently saw him falling back into coverage like he's a Sam linebacker or a strong side linebacker, So, and other times he was stunning to open up a lane for the linebacker to get the sack.
Oh, yeah.
And so later I saw him and said, well, you didn't hit that goal, but you got 2 interceptions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And you and your team got plenty of sacks. What do you think? And he was grateful. I mean, yeah, he wasn't going to get a lot of individual sacks.
Yeah.
So I wonder in the NFL stats when the scouts are saying you're really good or you're not because you had so many stats or you didn't, they have to adjust that for the style of play, maybe.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, you can't base everything off stats. I mean, like you said, a lot of guys don't play in 60 games and are able to rack up that many tackles and stuff. So in a way, it helps. But like at the end of the day, a lot of it is based off measurables. How young you are, how good you're performing at your pro day and stuff, and then if you have the film to back it up, obviously that's going to explode. But, I mean, there's just so many different aspects and variables to, what pro scouts, and I obviously don't know everything they're looking for. I think, having sacks on your stat sheet is definitely going to help a little bit. But like you said, I mean, guys like Tyler, they're just doing their 111th in the grand scheme of things. And, I mean, he wasn't responsible for a lot of sacks on the stat sheet, but the way the defense ran, the way the D line stunted and stuff to free up backers and other guys, that's the stuff that isn't always recognized, but I feel like scouts look for stuff like that for sure.
Plus the how you do at the combine, your size, your speed, your jumping, your agility, all that stuff.
It's crazy how much that stuff matters, just
right.
Being a little bit shorter. If you're an inch shorter than a guy and, you run the same speed, that automatically puts him above you,
Right.
In a lot of ways that's the case. So, it can be backed up by film, if you got incredible film and you're not, I mean, we've seen it this year. There's some guys who are underperforming in the 40 and stuff in the combine and the pro days, but, just around the country, but the film doesn't lie. Even Puka probably didn't run as fast a 40 as he wanted to.
I remember that.
Film don't lie. He's dusting guys in the games and making plays, going up for balls, winning jump balls. So at the end of the day,
LA's pretty grateful they picked him up, right?
No, without a doubt. Oh yeah.
And it is amazing that sometimes the things that are not measurable, whether it's your heart, or just your capacity to be at the right place at the right time because you anticipate. I don't know.
For sure. Instincts.
Those things matter.
coaches look for instincts. They'll go with an instinctual guy over a guy who's
Mechanical.
blazing speed. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. It all depends. There's so many variables.
So now, Max, you're playing with the practice squad at the Minnesota Vikings.
Yes, sir.
Tell us about that. I mean, first of all, what's the difference between the practice squad and being on the team?
Yeah, that's a question I get a lot, because a lot of people
don't know.
Yeah, a lot of people assume like the practice squad is a whole another team, like 50 men on the team. They meet somewhere else, but really there's like 15 guys on the practice squad for offense and defense. So roughly 8 guys for each side of the ball. And I mean, you do everything that the team's doing. You go to every meeting and stuff. If anything, you're doing more because you're getting extra lifts in. You're doing lifts when the team's traveling and stuff. So it's interesting. It's been interesting to kind of see how that works. But I mean, my first year was interesting as well. I mean, everybody starts out the same in that there's like 95 guys in the locker room with you when you first get in the NFL. So you don't really get a gauge for who was a practice squad guy last year, who was like a dog playing in the games, or like a special teams guy. I saw everybody as, NFL players, and, really that's kind of how it is.
You had tons of respect for guys to be in that room.
Yeah, exactly. So really everybody's kind of on the same playing field. Obviously there are guys who are immune to getting cut or something after the preseason, guys that are under huge contracts or aren't expected to do a whole lot in the off season. But, for guys who are fringe players, special teams guys, you're being looked at every moment of, fall camp, preseason. They're looking for everything because there's so much that goes into those last, couple of roster spots. And that's kind of where I was at last year, down in Houston.
You were with the Texans initially, right? Undrafted free agent.
And
so you were with them the whole year, or?
So I was with them from like May when we started OTA, our spring stuff, until the end of the preseason, actually after week two of the regular season. And then they released me, went up to Minnesota. So yeah, I had a very different experience at both places. Obviously,
really
physically, I mean, Houston's a very hot place. Like that was definitely the first thing I
played there once against Texas A&M, and man, it was hot.
No, that was the first thing I really realized is like, this is the closest place to hell almost on earth in a way, temperature wise,
humidity and temperature.
The way my body feels every day out there, I'm like, this is not good. But
in Minnesota, I mean,
and then Minnesota,
it's hot and humid there at certain times, but then
when I first got there, it was pretty decent weather because it was still like September or so. So September and October were pretty decent, and then it gets cold. So I got the hot of the hot in Houston and the cold of the cold in Minnesota. So it was two different experiences for sure. But
well, aren't there some other BYU guys on the Minnesota Vikings pro team?
There were a couple. So Kairos Tonga was there for a couple of years, and then Jaron Hall obviously got drafted there.
Right.
And was there up until like literally 2 weeks before I got there.
Okay.
They released him, I think, after the preseason. Then he got up to Seattle, so he's been in Seattle.
Okay.
So I just missed my buddies. Yeah, I know. I was kind of sad. I was hoping to be up there with Jaron.
And when you're on the practice squad, obviously you are part of the team. And then are you really putting in time, it's like in college, you might be third string, and if the starter or the second string guy go down, that you're the next in line? Is that what the practice squad is?
Essentially, yeah, it is.
Right.
Like, I mean, so there's different elevation processes that go on with practice squad guys. Like, I think you're allowed 3 elevations throughout the year. So there were a couple times throughout the year where...
What do you mean by elevations?
So you can be elevated for a week.
Onto the team.
Yeah, and be on the active roster, play, you could play every snap of defense if you want and still... And then next week you could be back on the practice squad. So
and that determines, how much you have to get paid.
Yeah, I mean,
probably.
Yeah, if you reach 3 elevations, then they have to elevate you to the active roster. Yeah, okay. And then I think they have to pay you the whole year.
Okay.
I'm still learning how this business works.
No, that's interesting.
There were a couple weeks where I was pretty close to getting elevated last year, but there's a lot of different variables in that sense as well. There's always, different number crunches. People are getting hurt. So the week that I was most likely going to get elevated, we had a D lineman get hurt. And so they had to elevate like a D lineman from the practice squad instead of a linebacker. So naturally that kind of cut away my chances of playing that week.
Sure.
And so it's interesting. I'm still learning, but
What do you have to do to, just keep your nose to the grindstone and keep working, or?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, especially this next year coming up, I'm about to go out to Minnesota in a couple weeks and kind of redo this whole, off season and preseason stuff. So I think it's pretty set. I mean, the NFL is just such a crazy business. Nobody's guaranteed their job the next day. So it's kind of the mentality you got to have is just come to work every day and
be ready.
Try to be better than the guy next to you and hope that, they want to keep you over him.
So what do you do relative to, say, your workout regimen while you're at BYU? I know you're a hard worker. What is it that you do? Where do you work out? What's your system?
Yeah.
For being prepared to play at the highest level in maybe the toughest sport in the world? I don't know. What do you do?
That's a great question because, I mean, college is different because you got a strength and conditioning team that you're working out with all winter long up until spring ball, and then all summer long you're with them. But, in the NFL, they kind of let you go after the season ends. They say, handle your business. We give you a guide. They give you like a workout guideline and give you stuff that you try to follow, but they kind of just say, this is your time. You're a professional, go work out with who you want. And so I've been working out just here in Pleasant Grove with Dave Stroshine at Stroformance.
Familiar with him.
Yeah. So I did my pro day training with him last year. And so just like the results we got there. And so he works with a lot of NFL guys. A lot of NFL guys have gone through his program and he played in the NFL. So, he's been getting me right this whole last year, since last
What do you work
January.
on? You work on just strength? Do you work on strength and speed? Do you work on speed? What is because you were a sprinter in high school, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, you ran track a little bit.
Yeah, I ran track a little bit. They thought I was a bad sprinter, so they kind of kicked me to the throwing. Yeah. So I was more of a thrower, a javelin.
But still, that comes from your legs and hips.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd say, the focus as a 27-year-old second-year NFL player for me isn't necessarily, putting on a ton of strength. Like, obviously, you want to get stronger, and like, I wouldn't work out if I wasn't getting stronger. But I feel like for the most part, it's just maintaining your body to the best of its ability. Being healthy to go. I always hear the saying, "Your best ability is your availability." So I'd say my focus, rather than, in college, I was always focused on trying to get stronger and put on a lot of size, which I still am trying to get bigger. I'm undersized in some ways. So
are you a middle?
Yeah.
Linebacker?
Like I play like Will.
Okay. Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, like our Will backer.
But you're undersized.
A little bit.
What are you, like 6'3", 230? Or?
Like 225, 6'2",
All right.
225.
All right.
So
all right.
Brian Flores really, he every time I talk to him, he's like, you need to be 235 for next camp. So I've been working on it. We've been going up, but I think, the main focus for me is just to, steadily improve, but mostly just maintain and be as healthy as I can. I don't want my knees and ankles feeling too overworked. But it's been good. Dave's got a really good, program and strategy that it's proven with a lot of athletes over the years. And, even this last couple months, I've seen my, speed and explosiveness increase every week. So
awesome.
Yeah. It's
good for you.
It's good to see.
Get there, man. We're rooting for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You said something interesting, and it's always been interesting to me because, first of all, unless you're a punter or a long snapper, most football players don't play until they're 35 or 40,
Mm-hmm.
And so the issue of kids going on missions and then being older from BYU, and therefore the NFL isn't quite as interested. I always wondered about that because, if your average running back's only there for 3 years
Yeah.
because of injuries,
Mm-hmm.
and you've always got a fresh crop of athletes coming in from this year's graduate, class in college, why wouldn't the NFL be just as interested? You're a return missionary from England, I know.
Yeah, England.
So you're the guy that they said, well, that doesn't happen very often because he went on a mission, so he's too old. Why did they have that attitude? Because it didn't seem to make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just like you were saying, there's always new, fresh prospects every year.
Right.
Every year in the draft, there's going to be these 21, 22-year-old guys. And so naturally, if you're selecting between, 22-year-old guys who have film and have the athletic ability and are fresher in their bones, like I feel like they're a lot more willing to take that guy over a 25, 26-year-old rookie like me. Obviously I think that played definitely a part into, whether I was drafted or not.
I think it did. I was paying attention. So.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not impossible for a 26-year-old to get drafted, but
and they say that your prime in athletics is 33 years old.
Yeah,
seriously.
Yeah,
that strength, speed, conditioning. When you're a conditioned athlete, I read. Now this was a long time in Sports Illustrated, a long time ago, but the physiology was that 33 was the prime. So. Okay, a guy comes in at age 26. The average linebacker's probably there for 5 years. You got him during his prime.
Yeah.
Why? And he's mature.
And
he's gone through some crazy stuff on his mission.
For sure.
I mean, it might make you even more prepared for the NFL rather than less.
That's what I was trying to tell him last year too.
Well, let's go. I'll be your.
It's hard to convince them.
I was going to say I'll be your agent. I'm totally kidding you on that, but.
No, it's funny how people, like I've talked to people in the NFL who played BYU at certain points, and that was a lot of the conversation going on throughout the week was, we're playing against old men.
Yeah.
We're playing against guys that are 5 years older than us. And like to an extent that kind of like intimidates people, I'd say, but
they always used it as an excuse, right?
Yeah, I always use it as motivation. I always said to myself, I'm just playing against 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids. Like I'm basically playing against high schoolers, so there's no reason I should be getting outworked. Losing a one-on-one battle with an 18-year-old.
Yeah, come on.
But that was kind of just the mentality I tried to have.
Well, you want to feel that you had an edge. That's a good edge.
Yeah, played the disadvantage to my strength.
And so you could have your teammates out on the field. Hey, Grandpa. Yeah. Grandpa Max.
No, I'd say there was probably 6 or 7 games my senior year where people, that's the trash talk they would do, is they'd call me old. They say, you're never making it in the NFL. You're too old. Like they just say all the craziest stuff about me being old, and then I just
let me show you my cane. Let me show you my cane, kid.
Yeah. So let's line up and see who's old.
Oh wow!
But it's funny.
Football's a funny game.
It is.
Well, sports are funny, but we were talking yesterday, and a lot of times in athletics, we tease each other, or you have that trash talk on the field.
Oh, you gotta.
Are you a trash talker?
I'd say I'm a little bit of a trash talker. I'd say if you watch any of the TV copies of games, you could probably pick out that I'm a trash talker. Certain games more than others, but I always felt like if I'm beating somebody one-on-one, if I'm, winning my battle on a certain play, like I have the right to talk a little trash, And that's kind of just how I always played the game. Because I wouldn't say I'm a real big trash talker, outside of football or anything. Like I'm really not that mean of a person.
I saw that you're a clean player,
I try to be.
Yeah.
I try to be.
Yeah.
I try to stay aggressive, but at the end of the day, there's rules. And
have you met Keanu Tanuvasa?
I actually don't think I have.
Okay, he's a
defensive transfer,
defensive lineman from Utah. Big and explosive. He'll be a great defensive lineman in the future.
Yeah,
it will be now.
Is he a trash talker?
Well, that's what I wanted to bring up is, we met him here, and one of the friendliest kind. How a lot of our Polynesian friends are just the most happy, gregarious. They're your friend immediately, and
Mm-hmm.
felt that from him. I mean, but then yesterday we met Jake Retzloff, and Jake was saying, I hated him during that
Really?
game, because he brought it
Yeah.
during the play.
It's different when you're opponents.
It's different when you're opponents.
Absolutely.
So, but obviously there's some mutual respect. He just
No, that's funny. I've definitely had some encounters with guys throughout the NFL where I had to, especially last year at the Big 12 Pro Day, seeing a lot of those guys for the first time, without a helmet on. There was some, we had some beef in those games, and it was kind of awkward meeting these old linemen and stuff, being like, hey, yeah,
you're that guy
we were jawing all game together, but, it's just the game.
And there at an event like that, I'm pretty sure that you could laugh it off with
no, exactly.
there, right?
Exactly. And
unless they're from Utah.
Yeah. No, exactly.
All right. Well, you mentioned Ben Bywater as a teammate, and he was another great linebacker.
Yeah.
But poor guy got injured, and had to hang it up. What is he your friend?
Yeah. No, me and Ben, we've been playing. He came in the year after me, so we had a lot of time together. We're always in the linebacker room together. It hurts me to see it. When I saw that, I wasn't in belief, honestly, because I assumed he was coming back playing his senior
I thought so
year.
too.
And obviously he had really, really bright aspirations and outlooks. Like he was getting, draft grades.
But it was his shoulder, right?
Yeah, his shoulder, I guess. And so,
what's that like as his friend? And here you see he has an injury that apparently is going to keep him out. How do you feel? What were your feelings? How did you and he talk about, his future at that time? Tell us.
Yeah, it's interesting because we got shoulder surgery at the same time. So I think he had a couple. He may have had 2 or 3. He had one before, but the first time I got shoulder surgery, we were doing all of our rehab basically on the same timeline. And so I kind of went through that whole rehab process. He was kind of actually showing me the ropes because he already gone through it once. So he was really helpful for me, honestly, during that time. But then, yeah, anytime you see a brother, not being able to do the thing they love, I think it's kind of eye-opening. And even last year, we're seeing that post of him, or the interview of him calling it quits over the media. I was like, it just opened my eyes and being grateful to, still be playing this.
To be able to keep playing.
Yeah, no,
but to feel
I've heard my whole career, it could be your last play at any given moment. And I've always, kind of, taken it serious, but it's never really, hit me that
you can't play
could be
scared.
a reality.
Yeah.
So anytime you see somebody who has goals and is a great athlete, it's hard to see, but he's a great guy. He knows what he's doing in life.
So what are his plans in life now since you're friends? And
I honestly, I couldn't
go into a career.
I don't talk to him as much as I probably should, but he's always had something going on. He's probably got his own business or something by now for sure.
Tell us about you served a mission in England. What part of England were you in?
So my mission was the London South mission. So everything.
Is that is Manchester in that? No.
So it's since been merged. So there used to be a London mission, which was basically everything north of the Thames, and then up to, I don't know how far it went up, past the Cambridge and stuff in that mission. And then my mission was everything south of the Thames and then all the way out west to all the way west. And so it was a pretty big mission to get across.
What's that? Isn't there a giant peninsula going west?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to think. I never served out there. The farthest west I ever went was a city called Bournemouth.
The Welsh? Do the Welsh?
That's a little bit more north.
Okay.
Yeah, that's I think it's the Birmingham mission.
Yeah, I'm not
sure. But yeah, so I served mostly on the coast, in university towns. So I started my mission on the south coast in a city called Brighton, which is very, very unique, kind of like San Francisco.
Oh.
San Francisco of England. But moved along the coast, served in Bournemouth. I served in Oxford for 9 months of my mission.
Wow.
That was actually the northernmost part of my mission because kind of
Was that
loops
mostly
up.
university type people?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was Chinese speaking on my mission as well. I didn't mention that.
Well,
yeah. Yeah. So that's why I was mostly.
So do you and Chad Lewis get together and visit a little bit?
I actually never really talked to Chad about speaking Chinese until like the last year I was there.
Is it Mandarin?
Yeah, Mandarin.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah. So
good for you.
Chinese speaking in London. It was interesting. You know, some of the areas I didn't have a whole lot of opportunities to practice and, you know, get the language down. So, you know, Chinese only got as good as it could have been, but the gift of tongues was real. I basically talked to myself in the shower and watched videos in Chinese and picked it up enough.
Are you still able to, you know, kind of
still
defend
talk?
yourself
Yeah, I
a little
could
bit?
still, you know, if I went to China for a couple months, I could probably get a lot better, but it's part of that.
Max
being
Tooley. Bilingual.
Yeah, Li Ming is my Chinese name.
Li Ming.
Yeah, Li Ming.
Why do they, you know, how do they come up with your name? Tell us.
Well,
Does Max convert to Lee or?
So Tooley, I think that's where they got my, you know, surname. So Lee is my surname.
Okay.
And then I didn't get a mission until I got out to the mission, or I didn't get a name until I got out to the mission. And my trainer was from Taiwan, and he said, I think you should be called Li Ming.
You will be Li Ming.
Yeah, he gave me my name, you know. So it was kind of funny because it's like a superstar in China, like some superstar. And so every time I told somebody my name, they'd be like, "Oh, you're a superstar," you know, just like it was funny.
I was so impressed. My son served in Leeds.
Okay.
He's a basketball player at Southern Virginia University now.
Nice.
So he was way after you, but we went and visited that area.
Yeah.
We went through London, and I mean, London has to be one of the most metropolitan cities in the world.
No,
you know,
it's massive.
People from everywhere.
Yeah.
Best Indian food you could ever.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I served in that area with I think 60 to 70% like Pakistani Indian population. So being a Caucasian person in that city was the minority.
Sometimes
so it was interesting.
We felt that way in parts, and yet it's a beautiful and nice city.
Oh yeah,
it was fun.
London's awesome, super diverse.
Are you grateful for it? Was your mission a good experience?
Oh yeah,
despite the fact that it made you be an older,
yeah, right,
you know, NFL prospect.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've kind of fought that battle since I've been home. You know, was it worth it to go? Was it like should I have stayed home and like tried to be younger to go into the NFL? But you know, every time I have a conversation with somebody, I kind of always, you know, draw back to the fact that I could never regret the mission. You know, the things I learned on the mission and like the experience I had, you know, it's just something you can't recreate in college. You can't do anywhere else. So I'd say for myself, you know, it was a great blessing and no regrets there.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember feeling the same way sometimes. Like, what if I hadn't?
Yeah.
What if? Whenever you're in sports, you always have these. Well, what if? What if?
Absolutely.
And yet you can't replace those experiences you had. Despite the fact, sometimes I remember saying to myself or to others, you know, I could score so many touchdowns and have so many fans cheering for me or whatever, but you can't replace those quiet, tender moments, you know, of when you're out there trying to help other people.
Having a crazy time doing stuff that, you know, other 18, 19, 20-year-olds, you know, probably would never be getting into. So it's just a really unique experience.
So it kind of gives you, you know, here you are, Grandpa Tooley. Yeah, right. You know, I should stop teasing you, but
no, it's fine
because you're a young punk in my no. But the culture at BYU, you know, Lavelle Edwards was my head coach, and we had Fred Whittingham as a defensive coordinator, Doug Scoville, and you know, we had great offensive coordinators as well. Mm-hmm. Mike Holmgren and other guys came through after Doug Scoville. And I just am so grateful for my football experience.
Oh yeah.
But then that mission experience was uniquely beneficial. And I think it will always be something in my life that I can, you know, be very grateful for. But the culture at BYU, Lavelle had a special culture. Kalani seems to have a very special culture.
Oh yeah.
In fact, you're the fourth guy in the last 48 hours that I've heard say, you got to do your 111th.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, obviously somebody is stressing, do your 111th, Max.
They better be.
Don't do his.
They better be. That's what football is.
Well, it is. It is. So tell me, I hear these things about Kalani's culture where he's trying to, go along the same path or even go further. He wouldn't say he's trying to go further. He's just trying to continue Lavelle Edwards' strategies. What do you think about love and learn?
Yeah, I had a feeling you were going to say those words.
No, I mean,
if you weren't, I was going to.
Well,
for sure.
No, what do you think about love and learn? How did that affect you? Football players aren't known for being the loving and learning type necessarily, No,
yeah, it's funny because, like we were talking about earlier, my trash talk kind of gets a little bit conflicting when it comes to stuff like that. He's always preaching against that stuff and telling to help up the guy you just knocked down, which I totally agree with. I think that stuff's great. But holding my tongue on trash talking was always something that was very hard. But he was always a great example. He'd always come out, he never cussed or anything. He always tried to keep his cool, and he was always preaching to just be respectful to your opponents. Whether we win or lose, you got to have that respect for them. You're playing the game, and you got to play with passion, but got to play within the bounds and between the whistles. All that extra stuff is just unnecessary.
Well, but it seems like he's very, I don't know, tolerant might be the wrong word, but we're all different.
Yeah.
You're a team full of guys from the East Coast to the West Coast and even out to Polynesia and Hawaii. And, and you're from north to south, all these different diverse cultures, backgrounds, Oh, yeah. I had teammates who had different kind of language than I did,
Mm-hmm.
And we all learned to respect each other. This guy plays with a little more different kind of passion, maybe not more passion. And so I assume that Kalani was, if you were trash talking, he might say, hey, tone it down a little bit.
Yeah, he might say tone it down, but yeah, he definitely understands how guys are wired. And, like you said, not everybody's the same. You get your good return missionaries who are definitely ball players, but they're never going to, open their mouth. They're never going to, talk a little trash. And, I kind of felt like I had to, I don't know. I didn't even really choose. I think it just happened in the moment.
Well, Max,
I couldn't really control it.
I'm going to give you some, I don't know, justification, because in my era, there's a guy, do you remember Dick Butkus?
Oh, yeah.
You've heard of Dick Butkus. Dick, everybody's heard of one of the most famous middle linebackers ever. And, he was one of the guys that would chew on nails. I'm sure he had things to say between the whistles, but everybody knew that he was playing hard,
Oh, yeah.
So he had huge respect. So as a middle linebacker, I think you have to have a little bit of that.
You got to have a little bit of that passion and that edge, that screw loose for sure. There's only so far you can make. Yeah, there's only so far you can make it with all your screws intact. So
all right. So what's your opinion on love and learn?
I agree with it. I like what Kalani's doing. I liked, the way he had the culture. Everybody respected each other in the locker room. Everybody wanted to hang out with each other. It wasn't very cliquey. Like, I feel like it can be in locker rooms. You'll get your groups of guys, who kind of branch off. But I feel like for the most part, every season I was there, we had great camaraderie, great team chemistry, and it all stemmed really from Kalani and his example and trying to cultivate our culture for the way it was. So
you said one thing that I wanted to, because you're the second guy in the last 48 hours again who played high school football for the coach at the same school that his father played.
Is that right?
And I thought that was fascinating. It was Tanner Wall, and he's from Arlington, Virginia. I forget the name of his school, but he played for the same coach at the same school. How often? That just doesn't happen. And yet
Tanner got some legendary coaches.
At Bountiful High School, yes.
Yeah.
But at Bountiful High School, you played for the same coach that your father did. I thought that's fascinating.
No, it's really cool. It's it's cool to have that because he was actually my bishop of my family's ward.
Your coach?
Yeah, after he retired. So after he retired, he was the bishop. And so he was the bishop of my family's ward that they moved into. And so it was kind of unique to see him, on Sundays, to see that side of him as well. But he's just, a great man. Awesome. He always had his firm traditions and stuff that he wouldn't stray away from, regardless of what everybody else was doing in the state. And I think he had like six state titles.
Wow.
In his tenure.
Right there in Bountiful.
Yeah, right there in Bountiful.
I love that.
Put some guys in the
NFL.
So.
Did he ever call you by your father's name?
I don't think so.
Okay. Because Tanner told us that, really? his coach was getting a little bit old and sometimes called him by his dad's name.
Yeah, that's funny.
Good memory.
My dad only played as a sophomore. Honestly, I haven't talked to my dad much about his football playing career, but definitely didn't play as many games as I did.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, as we end up here, Max, thank you for being here. What do you have any, final? We talk with a diverse audience. It's large, but mostly BYU fans.
Yeah.
Mostly, athletic fans. But I mean, what are your feelings about your experience at BYU, your experience with sports in general, teams, teammates? What would you like to share with us that, kind of life lessons or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I think something I've learned over the years, is you really just have to put it on paper. You got to say it out loud and stuff will happen. We're definitely capable of more than we think. When I was in third grade, I wrote down, it wasn't a journal, it was like a paper, an assignment for class, and I wrote down that I wanted to get a sports scholarship at BYU. And
that was in third grade.
Yeah, in third grade. Wow. Third or fifth. It could have been.
Well, yeah. Still, you were young, man.
Yeah, I was pretty young. So I just having that stuff, putting that on paper, putting it out in the universe, I feel like goes a lot longer of a way than people imagine.
That's interesting.
And
making a written statement of here's your goal.
Yeah, and I'd
your
say,
aspiration.
Everything kind of played out. And it's funny, the rest of the paper, really everything kind of played out exactly how it was written out. So I think just that, and then just committing with your goals. It was my goal and my dream to always play at BYU, and I just went for it and never strayed from that goal and that path. And I feel like it's brought me a lot of blessings, taught me a lot of lessons. Had some amazing memories at BYU, and
and we have memories of you, and often fun.
I know.
In fact, all of them fun.
It's funny because I had my time there. I did what I did, but to me, I'm just like a normal guy, So when people come up to me and say, "Oh, I loved watching you at BYU," I'm just like, I'm kind of taken back. I'm like, I forgot I even played at BYU, or anybody would remember my name.
And that's good on you, because life is long and you have lots of opportunities in a lot of different things going forward. So keep that attitude.
Yes, sir.
Because what I'm really impressed with this team now, and maybe you had this back then with Kalani, but he talked about love and learn, and now they're adding on humble and hungry.
Yeah. No, yeah.
Was that part of your...
Yeah, a little bit.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Max, thank you, brother. Thanks for showing up.
Appreciate you. Thanks for letting me on.
It'll be fun to watch you now going forward with the Vikings and whoever else you'll be able to play with.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for watching another episode of Beyond the Game. Remember to click here to subscribe and click here to watch our recent videos. Also, please follow us on social media, and remember, go Cougs.